My guests today on the Live Like the author of Balance of Power, 50 Years of Pioneering, High Achieving, and Influential Black Gymnasts, Jada Wright Nichols, and she is joined by the first Black gymnast to compete for the University of Nebraska, Racine, whose trailblazing journey is included in this amazing book, which we are celebrating here on the podcast for Black History Month of 2023. Balance of Power, 50 Years of Pioneering, High Achieving, and Influential Black Gymnasts is an empowering, inspiring, and necessary journey through the sport of gymnastics from a Black American perspective. Never before have these names, stories, and accomplishments been assembled in this way. Learn about 25 plus gymnasts who not only defied gravity but also the odds in a sport that did not always welcome or include them. These fearless athletes have competed around the world, set world records, and taken the world by storm. They have redefined what gymnasts look like, what they dance to, how they earn money, and even how they wear their hair. Sprinkled with a dose of Black girl magic, this illustrated and a captivating compilation of many biographies is a celebration of resilience, fortitude, and strength that go far beyond the vault, bars, beam, and floor. The balance of power is both literal and figurative, as these gymnasts have shaped power gymnastics as well as used the power of their voices to make changes within the sport and throughout the world. Mother-daughter creative team Jada and Lotus Nichols have had the experience of a lifetime writing this book together. The former and current gymnasts have discovered so many hidden gems and life lessons while reading articles, studying videos, listening to podcasts, and even speaking with the gymnasts themselves. They have a deeper appreciation for the sport that they both love, and every reader will too. So thank you so much for joining me on the Live Like an Acrobat podcast. Jada and Racine. I'm so excited to celebrate this book that I'm also included in for Black History Month. I should say that to guests and to everybody listening in. My story and my journey as an acrobatic gymnast is included in this beautiful, beautiful book that is being released and launched on February 4th of this year. It's currently available for pre-order, but I will be releasing this episode on the launch date. And so thank you both for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
This is a beautiful celebration that has never been done before, Jada. It's like the first of its kind, which I think is really fascinating. And we're on like the heels of Fisk University, which is the first HBCU to have an NCAA gymnastics team, which is amazing and which was pushed forward through Brown Girls Do Gymnastics creator and founder Darren. And I interviewed Darren a few months ago when this had just happened. And just only recently did they actually have their first competition. So it happened really, really fast. And for those out there that did not know that there was not a gymnastics team at an HBCU, which for those listening is an historically Black college. I actually did not know that until it happened. I didn't realize that an HBCU never had a gymnastics team. And now it's spiraling because now Fisk is not going to be the only HBCU that has its own gymnastics team. There is another university that is now adding a team. And I imagine that it'll continue to spread like wildfire and continue to take the collegiate gymnastics community by storm. But what a shame, and also too, what an amazing achievement. What do you both think about that? I mean, Racine, with your journey as being the first Black gymnast at the University of Nebraska, what do you think now? And how do you think that would have also too changed the course of your journey if you had the opportunity during your times as a high achieving collegiate gymnast to go to an HBCU and compete for one?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. I never thought that I would ever see an all Black women's gymnastics team, let alone at an HBCU. Never, I couldn't even imagine it. When I saw them on TV competing in Las Vegas during the Super 16, when I saw Corinne crying after the first girl competed, the first gymnast competed, I was on the couch bawling. So I cannot even imagine. Next Friday, I'm traveling to Rutgers to see this compete, and then they will be here in Maryland at Towson University. I know for a fact I'm not going to be able to hold myself together. I feel like I'm about to cry now because it is just, I can't believe it's striking me this way. It's just it is just unbelievable. I don't have any other words to say except it's just unbelievable. And I'm so happy that I'm alive to see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
And
alive to see it.
Racine, of course, Racine is really one of the first. I'm gonna say she thinks the number is too low. I think one of the first three Black gymnasts to compete on the college level. Yeah.
Mm.
I'll go to five if that makes
Wow.
you more comfortable, Racine. But
I
You've
like
done
you,
you've
Racine.
done all the homework. You have done all the homework. I trust whatever you say.
so
Yes.
she truly is a trailblazer, a pioneer. I mean, there is, it begins with her. She's right at the beginning, and now 45 or so years later, there is an entire team seated at an HBCU. So I'm the other kind of gymnast that Brown Girls Do Gymnastics really talks about. So they talk about a high achieving, a high level gymnast who wants to go to an HBCU but cannot because, excuse me, there are no programs. Excuse me, there are no programs or were no programs. I'm the other one who wanted to attend an HBCU, knew that there were no programs, so kind of let gymnastics go by, not the wayside, but it was no longer a priority. I prioritized and chose attending an HBCU over continuing with gymnastics. So this team at Fisk and the new team at Talladega, and even the tumbling and acrobatics team that's going to be at Morgan State next year, is really going to provide a way for Black gymnasts to continue. And not every Black gymnast wants to attend an HBCU. Not every Black person wants to attend an HBCU. But now, if she does not have to choose simply because there are no programs there. So it is amazing. I have seen them already. Racine and I were texting during Super 16, and we were both talking about how emotional it was. And I was able to see the team at UGA. I live in Atlanta, so I was able to see the team at the University of Georgia meet, and that also was emotional. My daughter's team had gone to see UGA last year, and we were just like, happy to see college gymnastics and happy to see one Black girl on the UGA team, and I think four on the Missouri team, and that was amazing. So just a year later, to see all of that magic on the floor from Fisk was just amazing.
It's incredible. I mean, even how it all it came together very quickly, promoting the team. And I'm very excited too. I hope that I will be interviewing some of the members from Fisk in the near future. And it was very emotional for me too when I interviewed Darren on the precipice of all of that coming together and just like what that means to all of
Yeah.
us in terms of that level of representation, that level of presentation, and that how long it has taken to make these games. And I think sometimes it's lost on the broader community of wow, it's taken 40 years plus for this to have been achieved, and then sometimes also too like those little, not little, but the I think the pushes behind the scenes that people are making, like Darren, in these spaces for such historic things to happen, and why they take so long or why they never have existed, and then the choices that can really change the course of someone's career. And again, Racine, I'll speak to your experience of coming back to what was your experience like in making the decision to go to University of Nebraska? How did that change the course of your life? Were you hesitant to make that decision for yourself? And I loved listening to you speak about your journey at University of Nebraska, and you speak about how most of your experience there was actually really positive and really, really great. But you were still the only one, and so many of us have had that experience. That was my journey, my sister's journey when we competed in acrobatic gymnastics as little girls. There were just a few of us, we could count them on our hands. The amount of Black gymnasts just in America, let alone outside of America at that time. And even though it has diversified and there's many more acrobatic gymnasts that are Black, it's still very, very few, and there's still very, very few even Black American coaches within the acrobatic gymnastics community at large as well. So how was that for you, Racine? And thank you for sharing your journey and your story with us today.
You are very welcome. I will say, to be honest, if I had to do it all over again, I would choose the University of Nebraska. I had an absolutely amazing career in terms of being a student athlete at Nebraska. When I was being recruited, of course, it was all by very large PWI, NCAA Division I schools. HBCUs was not even on the table for me because I love gymnastics. I breathe gymnastics. I wanted to continue gymnastics. And that was the bottom line. So I chose the University of Nebraska. Now, in terms of being on the team, my coaches, my teammates, there were never any issues whatsoever. I was supported, I was loved. To this day, I am still in touch with my teammates, and we have met up in different parts of the country to have reunions. We've met up in Nebraska, we've met up in Minnesota. So we are a very tight team. I would say me being the oldest and 3 years behind me, we're very close. As far as my experience on the campus, it doesn't mean that some derogatory, I'll say, words, the N word did not come out. Um, One being from another student athlete who asked me one time, I don't understand what's wrong with the N word. Why do you have a problem with me calling you the N word? And I think I don't even remember having a response because I was just so floored because I had not been in that type of environment. I'm from Maryland. I live outside of Washington, D.C., and it floored me. I know one time when my girlfriend and I, another African American female, were being dropped off at our dorms, a car drove by with all Caucasian males in there, and they were like, "N-word, N-word, N-word," and and they sped off. For me personally, I heard it, but it did not change what I set out to do. I went to University of Nebraska to study, to get a degree, to do gymnastics, to win conference championships, and to go to national championships. And that's what I did. And those who wish to call me those derogatory names or ask those questions that were just absolutely disrespectful and ridiculous, I just took that as that's their issue. That's no reflection of me, who I am, where I come from, and what I'm trying to do. That's how you were raised, and that's the end of that. So, that in a nutshell was my experience at Nebraska.
I think what's also fascinating about your experience too, Racine, is that you started gymnastics really late. Like I started late at 8. You started at 13. Like that is
13.
wild. It is wild. I mean, not only was it wild just to start gymnastics, but also to get to that level where then you go on to compete for the University of Nebraska. I mean, I've met people that started late, but they didn't necessarily end up having like careers in that way. But then I've also met very special people like you that started in gymnastics. I mean, as a teenager, when my first coach saw me, he thought I was way younger because I was so tiny. And then when he found out that I was 8, he was like, "Well, she's older, but I'll take her. I think she'd be." I think she'd do really, really well. He was my first coach, Nikolai from Bulgaria. He thought I was 5 because I was so tiny for my age. But
well, on top of being starting late at the age of 13. On top of being African American, I am also almost 5'9".
When I was like, Racine is so tall, she must be 5.
Yeah, I am 5'8.5". And the way I tumbled into gymnastics was just a complete accident. Actually, I started out in acrobatics.
Wow.
I was a dancer, and I took from age 6 to 13. I did acrobatics, tap, ballet, jazz, Hawaiian, Tahitian, and ballet during the school year.
Crazy.
Yes, I did all of that. Um, in
I could
school,
too.
I also ran track and played volleyball, but I was a dancer and I love dance. And a girlfriend of mine said, Racine, come to the gym with me. This was the summertime and dancing had ceased for the summer. And I said, okay. So my parents signed me up for 1 week and I went to the gym. I fell in love with it. And I was 13. And I asked my parents, can I do another week? And they were like, okay. I did the second week. I was like, can I do the whole summer? My parents let me do gymnastics at home summer, and that was it. It was a love relationship. And then my mom said, you have to make a decision. You cannot be a dancer and a gymnast. And she said, you can always go back to dancing. And so I chose gymnastics and I never looked back. And
Wow.
that was the end of it. But you know what? Back to when we were talking about my experience at Nebraska, the other thing I didn't think to mention was um, this could be seen as, well, negative, but depending on how you respond to it. Going to a place such as Nebraska, it's a very different environment than, let's say, if I were to go to the University of Maryland. Because even if you go to the campus of University of Maryland, they, of course, have more African Americans, but even if the university did not, you're in the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So you're going to see a lot of African Americans. But there was a lot of, can I touch your hair? Can I touch your hair? What are you putting in your hair? Why are you putting so much grease on your skin? There was all that. I was not offended by that and I was okay by that because my thought was I was in school with people who literally had never seen a Black person before.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, except on television. They have never been face to face with a Black person. And
Mm-hmm.
so you don't know what they're seeing on TV, though we do know what they're seeing on TV. And so I was okay with them. They asked permission. I let them touch my hair. I told them why I had to moisturize my scalp. I told them why I had to put so much oil on my
School,
skin
yes.
because how could I blame them for not knowing if they are from a town where I've heard we have a stoplight and that's a big city and everyone goes, I'm very serious. We have one stoplight and that's a big city and everyone goes to the same school, kindergarten to 12th grade, and they have never seen an African American person, not in the grocery store, not passing them on the highway in the car saying, oh, look, nothing. So,
Unbelievable and incredible. And I think also too to remind listeners, this was during the early 80s, early to mid 80s, right?
correct. I went
Racine,
to
you
Nebraska.
were having
I
these
moved on campus
experiences.
in the fall of 1984.
And also too, how much of those experiences are still the same? How much of my experience decades later was exactly like that? I mean, my experiences were so similar, and the similarities that we've all had as Black gymnasts over these years, where that could have been 40 years ago, but also could have been just like 5 years ago. It could also just be right now. And because we're still not the majority in any acrobatic or gymnastics or high performance environment in this way that is, I would say, gymnastics based. And how much of those experiences are like the same? You know, even when it comes down to chalk, I'm still waiting for someone to produce brown chalk or a different colored chalk. I mean, me and my sister just used to be covered in white chalk from head to toe, and like they didn't like that. You know, they didn't. They artistic wise, they didn't like that. And now there's like more of invisible chalk. But even to this day, I still use invisible chalk when I'm performing as a circus artist. And, you know, it's better. It's more colorless, but there's not yet chalk that's made for us. That looks great. on our skin, just much like our skin tones for mesh,
For
and
mesh,
for
or
nude for our
even athletic tape for,
athletic.
yeah, all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I used to, yeah, I used to get told that I used too much chalk. And I didn't use too much chalk. You could just see it against my skin. Or, maybe on the next event. But it
right.
wasn't more chalk than anybody else was using. So yeah, all of those
Right.
things. Yep.
That are just so instrumental and so unique to our experiences, and that are still continuing to change, that shape our experiences, shape how we experience or how we're experienced in gymnastic spaces. And speaking to you, Jada, I wanted to dive into your amazing effort, and also to give a really beautiful shout out to Wendy Hillard. The Wendy Hillard Foundation also started a few years ago in projecting Black accomplishments within the gymnastic spaces. And I finally started to feel honored in a way that I never had been with the work of the Wendy Hillard Foundation, especially as an acrobatic gymnast. My experience has many times not been included, even though I'm in the USA Gymnastics Hall of Fame, even though I was, one of the first in so many different ways. But because we're non-Olympic and because we cannot go into collegiate gymnastics, we are not allowed. Our journeys as acrobatic gymnasts have not usually been included in the same way. With all of my gymnastics friends that I grew up with and loved and competed with. So the Wendy Hillard Foundation has really done so much of, even educating me in so many ways of seeing who were the other very influential trailblazers that were Black in our spaces, and learning, even when I thought I knew everybody, and learning so much. And then this experience too, with you creating this book, Jada, again, a first of its kind. It's never been done. And I think it's also fascinating how long it does take for things of this nature, of Black representation, to be done, and who decides to this take on this beautiful task, because not anybody would want to do it, or think that it needs to be done, or that it's special, or it's so special to us. So I'm just so grateful that you and your daughter Lotus got inspired to include all of the historic achievements and influential achievements of Black gymnasts over these years. And again, how did you come to this, Jada? What has this experience been like for you? And how do you think it's going to shape the future and the current reality, I think, of Black representation in gymnastics?
Yeah, thank you. So this book is probably um the the worst, like, at home homework assignment, or the longest at home homework assignment that ever was. So I was a gymnast. My daughter's a gymnast now, but during the COVID years, uh, the gym was closed. She was at the very top of recreational at that time. So the next season, she would have been ready for team. Gym closed. Now she's just climbing up my walls, flipping off the stairwells, climbing in the pantry. And so she's still interested in that level of movement, but there's nowhere to put her. I am just a historian by nature. Both of my parents are. My mom is actually a genealogist, so she used to, like, drag me when I was about my daughter's age to the library in a whole different state, because they had better microfiche machines and more up-to-date census records. Like, that's what she had me into. My father is an oral historian, so he is great about telling stories of what life was like. Both of my parents grew up in segregated Alabama. Um, and so they both just love to tell stories, create memories. My mom is also a photographer. So this historian aspect has always just been within me. And I've captured history in different organizations that I've been a part of. So growing up as a gymnast who I had to look at, who was placed before me, was Nadia, who I just adore. So I had pictures and posters of Nadia. I consumed everything I possibly could about Nadia. And I didn't really know anybody. I knew the Olgas, I knew of other people, but it was just Nadia, Nadia, Nadia. And that was fine. And it's not a spoiler because it's out there. Nadia, I actually professed my adoration to Nadia, and she wrote a back cover blurb for the book. So she is looped in. I
Right.
know she is looped in, and I am so grateful. And that was important for me, selfishly, but also the first probably 6, 7, 8 gymnasts in the book also have that same level of adoration, and then later friendship with Nadia. So it's definitely full circle. But I say that to say,
It is. I love Nadia and Bart. I just wanted to say, Jada, I love Nadia and Bart, and I've been privileged to know them for years. And that's Nadia Comaneci for those listening out there that are not familiar with the gymnastics international world. Nadia Comaneci is the first perfect 10. She competed for Romania, and she then went on to marry Bart Connor, who was one of the highest decorated gymnasts in American history. They have a son, and I have been honored to work with Badia and Art for Bart and Nadia for years. And they are dear, and they're beautiful, and they're very influential in the community, and they have a huge gym in Oklahoma, and they commentate a lot for gymnastics competitions out there. So whenever you're listening in, you hear a familiar voice, it's usually Bart
yep,
Connor. And please continue, Jada.
yeah,
I wanted to put that in there because I love them.
yes, thank you. They are amazing. So I knew of Nadia. I did not know any other Black gymnasts, and that was really okay to me. I didn't know that I should. I didn't know that there were others out there, and so it wasn't until really Gabby. So fast forward many, many years now, um, when so I had left gymnastics, had stopped tumbling in college. I was married at this time with a baby on the way, and and then people start pinging me about this new gymnast, and that was Gabby. So that's 2012 now, 11 years ago is when I got back into gymnastics. So I am the same age as Betty Aquino, who I was had the privilege of seeing compete. She was the first Black gymnast I saw compete at Worlds in 1991, not too far from where I lived at the time. I was just in high school, and I was like, oh my God, who is that? Where is she? Wasn't in the papers. She wasn't, it was all about Shannon Miller and Kim Zemes, all of these people. And I'm just like laser beam focused on her. And the next year, Dominique Dawes came about. So, but I am that age, so I did not see them as I was growing up. And so when Gabby came on the scene, news outlets started talking about the
Gabby Douglas.
history of Blacks in gymnastics. And that's when I first saw the name Diane Durham. That's when I first saw the name Lucy Collins. So Lucy Collins was the first Black gymnast, Black female gymnast to make the U.S. Olympic team. Unfortunately, it was in 1980s. She was unable to compete due to the boycott for the Moscow Olympics. And then Diane Durham was a 3-time national champion. She was the first junior national champion. She did that twice. And then she won senior national championship. She was a shoo-in for the Olympic team. She was actually the last gymnast to beat Mary Lou Retton. And she was injured at the 1984 Olympic trials, And she was unable to compete in her very last event. And then there was just some confusion about what impact withdrawing from the competition would have on her eligibility to make the Olympic team. And it ended up not in her favor. and she did not make the, she was not able to make the Olympic team. And she was one of the best gymnasts in the world. So she passed on in 2021. That was the same year as the postponed now Tokyo Olympics. Same year that Simone Biles did her Gold Over America tour, and the same year that my daughter got back into gymnastics. So I'm trying to just kind of pour into her, teach her about this person or that person. So she knew Simone, she knew Jordan, and she knew, a couple of others. Simone had this beautiful tribute during the show, and where she showed love for other gymnasts from everywhere. And they were up on the screen, and then Diane's picture showed up, and I clutched my heart, and I said, oh my goodness. And my daughter was like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, I haven't taught you about Diane Durham. Oh my goodness. And so we go home, and you're pulling out Ebony articles and watching old videos and all of these things. And so she knows about Diane Durham. And then a few weeks later, she's in a competition, and my daughter is long and lanky. She's built very differently than I was. And at this particular competition, she wins beam. And on the way home, we're just kind of decompressing. And I said, boy, you remind me of Betty Aquino on beam. And nowhere near skill level, right? But just her form. And she's like, who's Betty Aquino? And I'm like, okay. The weave. Yes,
people.
So I'm like, we have to.
I think it's just making your skin crawl because you don't know about the people.
It's a tragedy.
Yes.
She has to know who Betty is.
Yes.
Right.
I'm like, we have some major
which is very common. I mean, Lotus not knowing that was like, it's a very common thing for a lot of younger gymnasts and Black gymnasts to not know who was here before. It's just it's so normal.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but
yeah,
it's so normal. But it's changing.
Well,
it's
right.
changing.
Well, now they will have an encyclopedia, because that's what we ended up doing. We created this book, and I really did want it to include lots of different types of gymnasts and artists, because it starts actually with Alexandra Nicholson, who's a trampolinist. She's a trampolinist, and she was the first Black gymnast to compete outside of the United States, representing the United States. And she was like on the cover of Jet magazine in the 70s. And, nobody knows her name, or not enough people, I should say, know her name. And then number 2 in the book, and it goes basically in chronological order, number 2 in the book is Wendy Hilliard. So Wendy Hilliard is absolutely a historian and a change maker, still a dynamic coach. But she was a trailblazer, a world champion. I mean, she did all of the things in her day in the early 70s. And we're talking right as Title IX came to be, right when girls and women were federally, legally able to compete in as many sports as boys and men. And so they are true pioneers, and we would not be here without them. And so so I wanted to make sure that I included acrobatic gymnasts, and it wasn't wasn't hard to who to choose. But but I will say, yeah, let me say that what saved, I think, my daughter's relationship. She's an artistic gymnast right now. But what really saved her relationship with gymnastics was Darren Moore's in-flight gymnastics class, which is a circus type class. So right when the world was kind of reopening up, she was offering this class. It was way across town from where I am. And I said, well, it's something. Let's, get you in it. And so there's a trapeze and there's walking on a ball and there's doing all of these things. And she loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. And then and that was also during the summer Racine. So it was like 3 sessions during the summer. And right at the end of that, her old recreational coach called and said that she was starting a team and asked if Lotus would come to try out. And I said, I think she's kind of finished with that gymnastics, and we've missed 2 years. There's no way that you can make up for that. And she was just kind of like, everybody's kind of missed 2 years. Oh yeah, I guess so. And so we went to try out and made the team, and we are here. But my daughter really does have a soft spot for the circus arts. So, as much as we're ripping and running now for vault, bars, beam, and floor, I would not be surprised if she ended up doing something maybe a little different later on. Yeah.
So I really, really hope so that she pursues a circus career, because she would be perfect.
Yeah.
And she would, there's so much potential there, especially now, the overlap and transitioning into the circus world. And also, too, to bring it back to Darren Moore, again, the founder of Black Girls Do Gymnastics. She has an event company that produces circus entertainment in Atlanta. And I've been, so fortunate to work with Darren in that way. So she not only projects in the competitive space, she also projects Black performers and artists in the circus arts entertainment space as well, which again, there are not very many of Darren Moores out there that are doing that, and there are not so many of us that are Black circus performers either. So again, just a shout out to everyone, and so many of them, I am very fortunate, are the audience of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast, and so we listen and we live and breathe this, because again, it's a very small community. It's continuing to get bigger, but the expansion and the overlap within these worlds of Black and brown girls is very, very special and continues to still be pretty niche. So.
Yeah. What I love about the book is exactly what you two touched on before. So as I'm working on the bios with Lotus, she was my little researcher and editor, low budget editor, but 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 she would I know. But I love to see Racine, you say, I was an old gymnast, right? Starting out. And Shenea, you say, I was an old gymnast starting out. And I'm like, oh my goodness, wait until you read this. Same with the height issue, right? Racine, I think, is the tallest in the book. But Ashley Miles also she's 5'7". And like, I'm a tall gymnast. And I'm like, oh, have I got something for you? And so there are,
I used to do performances at Alabama University when Ashley was still competing. So me and Ashley Miles go way back when she was a star. Oh, I just have to say, Ashley Miles was she was like Beyonce at the University of Alabama when she competed, and I got to witness that. I would come and do my acrobatic performances.
She is fierce. And
One thing
were you going to say, Racine?
one thing I wanted to say. I was going to say one thing I was going to say about the book is I am very grateful and thankful that it was placed on Jada's heart to put this book together and include all different aspects of the artistic gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics, acrobatics, trampoline. I know for a fact when I started in gymnastics, I remember looking through IG magazine. I don't know if that's still around anymore, International
It
Gymnast
is.
magazine, and seeing advertisements for books just like the one that Jada wrote, but there were no black and brown girls in there. And I remember going to the library and looking at this book, and you would see, of course, your Nellie Kim, your Ola Corbett, your Nadia Comaneci. And at that time of my life, I don't even know if it entered into my mind of where are the African American females, because there were just no African
Right.
American females. I felt like I was just in this bubble by myself. So now that black and brown gymnasts and those in acrobatics and rhythmic gymnastics, they can now go to the library, go to the library in their local public school, and go see this book and see girls who look just like them. Because obviously, of course, as we know, nothing like this exists. Not even, I mean, Jada wrote has an entire book of 25 plus athletes. You couldn't, and it's not even that we were kept out of the book. As someone said to me when I was telling them about this book, they said, "Oh, they kept us out the book like they keep us out of everything else." I
No,
said, "No, this time they didn't keep us out because
we
there
were
was
there.
no us. We were not in any of these sports."
Right.
Now here we are. So I am thankful that she wrote this book, and Jada knows how I feel about it. I'm so honored that I'm like she chose me to be in this book. I was just floored when she contacted me.
Well, and what I have then my reply to Racine has been it's more likely that a little girl reading this book will be a collegiate gymnast than a two-time world champion. so so she needs to know that all of these options are out there, right? She needs to know. So I love giving all of these flowers right now. I wanted everyone to just feel celebrated, including Wendy, who has done so much to make people feel celebrated. I'm just kind of like, relax. I want to do this for you. But I,
You don't have to do it all, Wendy. Not all the heavy lifting. He
yes,
has, though. It's like
yeah, but I want you to feel it. I want you to know that we see you and we appreciate you, and I personally appreciate you for paving the way and being a role model for my own daughter, and talking to um, so many of the gymnasts when Lotus has been around. They have just like poured into her. One day she came home. We came home from a meet, and we had a meeting with the gymnast, and I'm stressed trying to make sure that I get home on time so that I don't miss this call. And Lotus, she didn't get a terrible score, but she didn't place very well. Not what she's used to doing, and she was just kind of grumpy and maybe even a little embarrassed. And although she didn't say that word, but she reluctantly got on the call with this gymnast who is a world class gymnast, and just poured so much into her and helped her to reframe what she was thinking about that meet, her placement, gymnastics in general. And the meet was probably an hour and a half away. We came back through the rain, so that was even worse. And she hopped off that phone and was like back to doing cartwheels and handstands all throughout the house. The next week, won the meet, won a different meet. So I'm just so I'm so grateful to all of you for providing all of the pieces to this story, which has really only begun. It does encapsulate 50 years. It's not every Black gymnast over the last 50 years. It's not even every Black collegiate gymnast over the last 50 years. I try to mention as many as I can, as we could. But when I think about Fisk just starting out in Talladega, and the new coach who was just announced at Talladega, and the girls in college now at D1 schools who are gymnasts of the week and specialists of the week and winning all around championships and possibly 2 times, all of these things. There's not going to be a book large enough to capture all of these accomplishments. So it really had to be done now, because what's on the horizon for Black gymnasts is just more than I think any of us probably imagined. Yeah. Yeah.
There will be several books.
There will be several books.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that you're working and you have some things in motion too, because of course it's like the international aspect, of gymnastics and Black gymnasts. I mean, those were the ones also too that I didn't know in my day as well that were not American. There were a few, there were a few that were there in my awareness and when I traveled and who I did know that were Black gymnasts. But I'm excited to see how much more you're going to do, Jada.
Yes.
I mean, in terms of that level of representation, and then the different pathways that you're going to go into for your subsequent books too, and the amount of people that you are able to include. And that's just going to be able to increase even more awareness and increase, I think, again, even more books.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. I want it to be well understood that for those of us who can nerd out on gymnastic stuff all the time, this will be a great book. For those of us who don't know
all day, every day.
For those who don't know anything about gymnastics, this is still a great book, because it talks about pride and excellence and perseverance and all of these different stories that are relatable and applicable in every area of our life. We've seen these stories, and now here's one of those survivors. Here is one of those champions. Here is one of we've got, I hate to compare gymnastics to other sports, but I will say today, like, we've got a Kobe Bryant of gymnastics in this book. We've got these people in this book. If you
we have the goat.
read, we've got Muhammad Ali's in this book. I mean, we've got some amazing athletes in this book. And so if you're at all into or inspired by or intrigued by, I'll even say, Black excellence, then this is it. Or and just excellence, because some of the, there are a lot of first Black, right? But there are a lot of first ever. There are a lot of first Americans, right? Where you take out the rest of the modifiers. So it's it really is for everybody, and it's beautiful. so it's a nice collectible as well.
It's a lovely gift. It's a collectible. It's something to give away at camps. It's something to give away in your day-to-day at your gyms. And, I know that we're all in spaces because of our past. I'm always being asked of what kind of materials do I suggest for little girls or little boys and parents and friends and, friends of friends, of what can I have them read or what can I have them look to that will inspire them or help them to understand the journey and the different aspects. Because again, I think this is a beautiful book in terms of representation of you're not alone in your journey, because all of us had so many different unique journeys, like what you were saying too, Jada, in terms of first. Sometimes people do think I was just the first Black acrobatic gymnast in some spaces, but I remind them, no, I was the first American in most of the spaces that I'm speaking about. And even to this day, I'll say I'm still the only American that was in that space doing that thing. And it just floors people in that way, where it's like, okay, it's not just about, us being Black or being African American and being influential. We were the first Americans to do that. And that also too changes the perception and changes just the knowledge and the understanding of the heights that so many of us that were in this book and the collection of this book and just throughout history have been have how we have represented America just in general terms, and how unique and special that is. And I think that it's riveting. I think it's a long time in coming. It makes me very emotional. This last 3 years has been profoundly unique, I think, in the experiences of so many of us that are African American and Black within the gymnastics world, and experiences and sharing how we have felt and what our journeys have been like and what our experiences have been like and who shaped us and who was there for us and how we got to where we got to. And I want these stories to be told.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why I created the Live Like an Acrobat podcast as well, is to give voice to the experiences of Black and brown girls and boys and men and women that are in the performing arts space and that are in the competitive acrobatic and gymnastic spaces too. So for me, it's just been a profound journey of now speaking about things in a way that I never did when I was a competitor, and even within my circus career, never really having the opportunity to share how it is to be the only Black person in a very far off city doing what you love to do, but never being around anyone that looks like you or speaks like you or had like experiences like you either. So as many things that we can have that represent our culture and our journeys, I think it's just such a gift. And so thank you again, Jada, for producing this work and for taking the time, the diligence, because even from the things that I've done with like my podcast, it is not for the faint of heart in collecting things of this nature and for taking the time to do it, and for having these personal conversations and connections with all of us that have been represented inside of the book, because every single time I do get represented, it means so much to me within my life and my family, and those that have been on the journey with me. You know, so many of my friends, my former partner, acrobatic partner Arthur Davis, you know, that was on that journey with me in acrobatic gymnastics, was like, wow, like someone is finally doing something like this and including your career. And, you know, he was like, you know, these are people that have known me my entire life since I was a little girl. So, you know, for people that don't think that it makes that big of a difference, it does. Even after all these years of experiencing and having those accomplishments, and, you know, and what that will mean to current generations and then to subsequent generations that have things that we never had. And uncovering those Jet magazine covers, and you know, those are just archives, and they should be known and they should be seen and built up and remembered. So I know that you've also too been on a tour, Jada, which I think has been fantastic. You've been on a book tour, and I also too wanted to talk about the significance of the February 4th date that is the launch. I know that's connected to one of the beautiful trailblazers in the book, so please
Yeah, so February 4th, 2021 is the date that Diane Durham transitioned suddenly. And so when so I don't think I've said that we knew, you know, I knew that I wanted to write the book, and then but it was just kind of like on my to-do list, and I knew that Alexandra Nicholson had started competing internationally in 1972. So right at the beginning of 2022, when the Fisk team was announced, I said, oh, this is 50 years exactly. This is what we will do. So I started thinking about launching just like during Black History Month, and then so I had that as like a loose deadline. Diane's bio was the first that I did just to get into it, and then when I saw February 4th was the date that she passed away, I said, that is it. I looked it up on the calendar. It was a Saturday. I said, this is when the book will be released. And we will, you know, that's what we are driving toward. So fast forward many months when we've written the book, and now we're just going back to, as both of you know, to check in with the athletes to make sure that things are correct and it's the way that you want to be depicted. And Racine was actually, and I was so nervous because I'm a nobody in gymnastics. I'm not right. I'm like, nobody's gonna be able to know it. So I didn't want to be this weird person just reaching out to people on social media. Although I've definitely been this weird person reaching out to people on social media. And so, and both of you talked to me even before I had a website up or anything. So thank you for trusting the process. But Racine was the first person who I spoke with, and I'm giving out as much as I possibly can, including this date, February 4th. 2023. I'm just like, I want these people to know that, I mean business. This is going to happen. I'm not a crazy stalker. Racine, she's the first person I talked to. Racine, what is February
I
4th?
didn't know that.
What is February 4th, 2023 to you?
You're trying to make
I'm
me
not. I'm
cry.
not. I'm not.
Well, first, I have to say this. Jada really did her homework. I stepped into a gym 44 years ago. And so it's not like you can Google Racine Smith and you're going to find all this
No.
information because the internet and Google and cell phones and podcasts and none of that existed. I mean, you might have found something more recent about me. For example, when Nebraska did something on me a couple years ago, or I was on ABC News or in a newspaper a couple years ago. But when Jada and I connected, and she wanted to make sure that all her facts were right, and she had my blessing, she was telling me things. I said, how did you know that? I mean, she knew about when I was the all around champion in club gymnastics, the AAU all around type champion in my junior and senior year in 1983 and 1984. That is not, to this day, I don't know where Jada got that information from. I'm like, who knows that? I mean,
Amazing.
it was a great accomplishment, but who knows that? And where's that written down anywhere? But
It's in the book.
we told when she
Gymnastics detective. That's what she
right,
is.
when
Gymnastics
she
detective.
told me that the book was going to be released on February 4th, 2023, I got goosebumps and I said, she could not possibly know this. When Jada and I were speaking, she really understood that my parents were very, very, very supportive of me. As a matter of fact, before I tell you what the significance of June 4th is, I would like to share with you that when we spoke, the cover of the book and the illustration of me in the book was not public. And I asked her if I could share it with my mother. My mother was 98. I don't think I was planned. But anyway, my parents are older than most of my friends' grandparents. I asked Jada if I could share the book cover and the illustration of myself in the book, and she was gracious enough to share it with me, and I shared it with my mom. And I told her about the book, and she passed away 2 weeks later. No, I didn't know. I know. I didn't know my mother was going to pass away. She just passed away of natural causes of being 98. But for me, and the relationship with my mother, there are no stones unturned. And the fact that I could share this with my mother, and it's a book for a play on words, I felt like it was my mother's last chapter. I was able to share this with her. And when she passed away, I think I reached out to Jada that day or the next day, and I said, "Thank you so much for entrusting me with your body of work and pictures that you had created, for allowing me to share that with my mother." And I know her work was not public yet. Now, to Jada's question, the reason February 4th, 2023 is so significant to me, and I could not believe this, and it's something that Jada actually didn't know, is that if my father were alive, it would be his 100th birthday.
Wow. Oh my God.
100 years old.
So when this
So
comes
I just,
out, happy birthday, Daddy.
right.
I
I'm just
mean,
like,
how
oh my goodness.
significant for
Right.
you.
And in sharing this with my mother, I just felt like
Full
I
circle.
felt like all that my parents sacrificed,
Yeah,
and they sacrificed. They
mine
sacrificed
too.
for me because, as we all know, gymnastics is very expensive sport. They sacrificed. I felt like, you know, it was a tribute to my mother while she was still alive. Of look at this, all that you and Daddy sacrificed for me. Someone sees that what I did or accomplished was important. I can't believe it. And I would not be looking for that at all, but I was so happy to be able to share that with my mother before she passed away. And then the fact that it's going to be released on my father's 100th, what would have been my father's 100th birthday, is just absolutely, it's a God wink.
Yeah, the synchronicity.
Absolutely unbelievable. So again,
Yeah,
Jada, thanks.
there's
What a blessing.
and so there's one more for this same date. Um and that is, we had the book completed, um and then the world championship team was announced, and Jordan was already in the book and Shilese was already in the book. Jordan from the Olympics, Shilese from the work that she had done at nationals, um, because that was historic. Three Black gymnasts topping the podium for the first time ever at nationals happened in this year that we're writing this historic book. And so they're in there. The three of that podium piece is actually on the back cover. Um, and and then Sky Blakely, little Sky Blakely, what also made the world team. And so I'm telling Lotus, we might have to put Sky in the book. We're just going to kind of see, I don't know how she does, or, I mean, and we're far along in the process at this point. And I said, so, let's just kind of be prepared for that. We'll get her illustration done if we decide to put her in. And my daughter starts looking up her information because she's asking Alexa, she's going to Google, she knows what to do by this point. So she starts looking up Sky Blakely, and she's like, Sky Blakely, born February 4th. And I'm like, she's in the book. She's like, you don't
Wow.
want me to say anything? I'm like, no, she's in the book. She's in the
Right.
book. we're not gonna wait to see what she
Oh,
does at Worlds. Nothing. She is in the. Her mom did the work 18 years ago. So
We had any
wow.
doubt.
right. Yeah. So she's in the book, and I had the opportunity to share that with Sky, but more importantly, her mom. Not more importantly, I don't mean that, Sky, but also her mom. So it's, yeah, super super cute, and yeah. So fortunately, lots of little God winks throughout this process, um, which has gotten us over and beyond. So I'm grateful. I'm excited for people to see it and read it. And I am one of those people who I probably will never read it again. It's hard for me to look at my own work once it's out. But yes, feedback and all of the things. I want everyone to be happy with it. I most of all want the gymnasts and your families to be happy with it. Yeah.
Well, they're all looking forward to it. They're so excited to get their copies. And if you do not understand what the release date is, anybody doing it, listeners, it is February 4th. Just to remind you, with all of these beautiful synchronicities around that date. And coming to a close for the podcast, Jada, can you please and where we can follow you and your daughter Lotus.
Yeah, so we are now everywhere. If you search for literally Lotus on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and YouTube, even we're going to do some very cool things on YouTube coming up. But so we can be found there. The website is www.literallylotus.com. That's where for the month of through February, you will be able to purchase the book. And then in March, the ebook will be available, an activity book as a companion for this hardcover book will also be available, all three through Amazon and all of the other distributors starting in March, which we just trickle through because then that's Women's History Month. So same energy.
Thank you so much. And Racine, where can we find and follow you?
I am only on Facebook.
Okay.
Facebook, and I am on Instagram.
Okay, and what is your handle on either?
Oh, on Facebook, I'm Racine Williams.
Okay.
And on Instagram, I'm April.Racine.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And for listeners out there, please, please, please take the time to buy Balance of Power, 50 Years of Black Gymnasts. Take some time to tune in to all of the work that Jada Nichols is doing through Literally Lotus. Even if you don't purchase the book, follow all of her social media because she shares so much about all of our journeys as Black gymnasts over the past 50 years in America. And you can continue to learn more and more and more about our evolutions through Literally Lotus and all of the different evolutions of where Jada and her daughter Lotus will be taking all of the knowledge and all of the historic achievements that have happened and into different avenues, and then what remains to be accomplished. Like we said, there is so much that remains to be seen with the level of Black gymnasts in America. And so thank you everyone for tuning in. And I will leave you with the Live Like an Acrobat podcast. It's available on Circus Talk, the inclusive, independent, and international online network for the circus industry. Circus Talk's mission is to create a level playing field for this industry and democratize access to information. Thank you so much, Racine, and thank you so much for Jada. Thank you so much, Jada, for joining me on the Live Like an Acrobat podcast. I'm so honored to interview and to speak to you both. Thank you so much for your energy. Thank you so much for your journeys. And I'm very, very, very grateful again for Balance of Power, 50 Years of Black Gymnasts, of being included in it, and for how you are uplifting all of our stories so much, Jada. Thank you again. I know I speak for everyone. We're very, very grateful for everything that you and Lotus, your daughter, are doing for us and representing our stories and our journeys. And take care to you both. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into the podcast.